Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening's meeting. Just a quick reminder for everybody present in the room that we are being live streamed via the Council's YouTube channel, so please be aware of that. First of all, do we have any apologies for absence this evening?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Taylor and from Philip Webb, our independent member.
Thank you very much. Item 1 on the agenda is minutes of the previous meeting. Is everyone in agreement that I sign the minutes of the meeting of committee held on the 9th of July?
Yep.
Item 3, Code of Conduct, the annual update. This is Lisa. Oh, sorry, just completely skipped item 2 there. Members' interests. Does anyone have anything they wish to declare? No. Now we'll move on to item 3, Code of Conduct annual update. I'll hand over to Lisa, who is going to introduce this item for us.
Thank you, Chair. Members will be familiar with the format of this report. It's the annual update of Code of Conduct report complaints, and it's your responsibility as a committee to maintain high standards of conduct for members of district and town and parish councils as well. So the report's in front of you. So just turning to the summary, you've got the summary of the complaints, some that have been concluded, some that there's also one that's still outstanding at the moment. The only thing I perhaps just want to bring your attention to, as it's set out in paragraph 3.3, was the complaint reference 2567. So this resulted in, so as a result of that, there was a complaint that was referred to the local government and social care ombudsman, and I think Louise will be referring to that in her report as well. The complaint was, a report was published by the LGO. So the direct result of that was we had to, an apology was issued to the complainant, some further training for statutory officers undertaken, and there was a slight tweak to the monitoring officer protocol, but it didn't dilute down what the purpose of our monitoring officer protocol in the first instance. So ultimately, our responsibility is obviously to maintain those high standards of code of conduct for town and parish councils, but equally the onus is still on town and parish councils to uphold these high standards as well, in terms of and if they do get complaints, the encouragement is for them to see if matters can be resolved locally, given the fact that we've got 71 town and parish councils locally, and history is played out with that generally that's what happens. But I think in this instance it was something that was referred to us that had required further investigation. And again, I'm happy to take any questions.
Do we have any questions or comments? Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Lisa, for the report. I think it's about that very item in paragraph 3.3, where it says that the protocol has been amended to prevent the outsourcing of decisions on members' code of conduct. What was the outsourcing of decisions? Is this the outsourcing to the town council, and it should have been done by the officers here? Is that my understanding of that?
Through you, Chair. Without going into the detail of the complaint, in summary, so how complaints work with town and parish councils ultimately is the expectation under the Localism Act that they would see if they would investigate the matter and see whether they can resolve that locally. But in instances where they can't do that, they can be referred to the monitoring officer. In this instance, it was referred to us without investigation by the respective body. So I think the issue being was, I suppose we were at an impasse really in terms of from our perspective, there should have been some investigation locally at that stage, but that wasn't undertaken.
Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Chair. On the table at 3.1, and Lisa, thank you for that. Could you just give us a flavour? I see two of our colleagues, maybe one of our colleagues, is under investigation. Without going into the details of that, can you just give us a flavour of how long those investigations have been ongoing? Because one of the things that's kind of missing from the table is when the complaint was made and when the resolution was reached.
Again, through you, Chair. Yeah, that's a really valid point. I can certainly incorporate that into the table in future. But again, the one that's still under investigation, obviously I can't provide any further detail, but again, it has been referred for independent investigation. So yeah, but in terms of the time frame, I haven't got a conclusion date at the moment. But again, I think that's a valid point to feed into the report. So yeah.
Do you want to come back?
So has it been going on for a month or 3 months or 6 months or?
Through you, Chair, it certainly hasn't been going on for longer than 6 months because the monitoring officer protocol states that we wouldn't consider complaints dating back further than 6 months. So yeah, no, it's a matter of months. So yeah.
Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. Do we have a specific documented process for a complaint? So, for the example of the town council, where there was perhaps the process wasn't perhaps followed properly. Do we have a documented process for a complaint?
Through you, Chair, I think it is detailed in the Constitution, which is a public document, which is the process for monitoring officer protocol as well. And obviously the monitoring officer protocol, these are all public documents. They're available on the website as well, and it details the procedure that would be expected to follow. So yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. So the recommendation is to note the progress of any outstanding code of conduct complaints and the conclusion of cases resolved today. Is everyone happy that we receive the report? Yeah. Thank you. Item 4, the annual complaints and feedback report 24-25. Louise will be introducing this item for us.
Thank you, Chair. You're probably all familiar with this. It's been coming for a number of years now. The purpose of the report is to provide data on Stage 1 and Stage 2 complaints that are received by the Council between April 24 and March 25, providing broad themes on the actions taken, service improvements that have taken place as a result. The report also provides members with information on complaints referred to the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman during the same timescale. And this year, we've provided much more detail on compliments received by service area. I would just like to take you briefly through the highlights of the report. So we have seen an increase in Stage 1 complaints this year, so 224 compared to 206 last year. There's been an increase in Stage 2 complaints, so 43 this year compared to 33 last year. We met our deadline of resolving Stage 1 complaints, target of 90%, and just missed out on our deadline of resolving Stage 2 complaints within as a target of 90%. Within the report in Appendix 3 and 4, you'll find all of the complaints themes, the actions and service improvements by each service area. 21 complaints were received by the LGO, 19 last year, and of those 17 were decided with one investigation which was carried out, and that was upheld. Lisa's already referred to that particular investigation. We continue to see a reduction in the number of HDC complaints. And finally, it's always helpful to see a comparison of complaints with compliments, particularly when we are reporting on complaints. So we've seen 217 compliments this year compared to 206 last year, and Appendix 5 contains much more detail on compliments by service area and their themes. Appreciate that data on compliments might not be a true reflection of all of the compliments staff and services receive, but we continue to encourage all of our staff to record compliments on our internal compliments tracker. That brings me to an end of the highlights of the report, and I'm happy to take questions.
Councillor Hodgson-Jones.
Thank you. You hesitated over the number of complaints referred to the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman as to whether it was 21 or 22. Is that because the 22nd is the one that was referred to in the previous report on Code of Conduct?
No, I'd written the wrong digit down. It is 21, yeah, and 17 were reviewed, yeah.
So that 21 doesn't include...
It does include the...
It does?
Yes, it does, yeah.
But it's 21 including that, not
yes,
22?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Chair. At the risk of sounding a little bit picky, I just wonder whether it's possible to align in Appendix 3 and 4 the themes and the actions taken. It would just make it a little bit more easy to read for future iterations of this document.
Do you want to respond?
I can do that for you.
Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Chair. And I think it's, I think that the stage one and the complements both, that I don't think there's any, they look broadly in line with last year, a slight increase in both. I think it's the stage, and hitting the deadlines as well, I think is very encouraging. The stage 2, which is of course disproportionately higher increase, albeit on a smaller number, and it's taking longer to resolve those within the limits. I read in the report that some of this was down to some senior staff absence. Are there any other underlying issues in trying to resolve some of those complaints in a timely manner that we should be aware of that are an ongoing issue that aren't going to be resolved when the senior staff member is back?
I think because of the figures, that's why I put in those bullet points underneath that section to provide some context for that. In answer to your question, no, I'm not aware of any. And it's a real shame that on one of those stage 2 complaints, it was one day that it was late, and the service that was without, they now do have a member of staff in place. So, and there's also a role for me with encouraging people more. There is systems in place to ensure that those targets and deadlines are met. It's just unfortunate on this occasion, 8 were late.
Thank you for that, Ruth. And just on a slightly different tack as well, I think it's quite useful, that comparison with the other local authorities in the area about the LGO statistics. Clearly, I'm guessing that stage 1 and stage 2 statistics aren't published in the same way for those other local authorities. But do you have any sense of for yourself where we compare to our neighbouring authorities in dealing with stage 1 and stage 2 complaints that don't go to the LGO?
It's quite difficult to get that information. It's not impossible, but I think it would be useful to have that comparison with our neighbouring authorities. It's a matter, I suppose, of where are their annual reports? Where are they on the internet, and are they in the same format? So that could be one way of finding out that information. Another way is contacts to get that data. Chair, would that be something that should be included in the report next year?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, that would be really useful. Thank you. Of course.
I think that's a good idea to put in next year's report, but with the caveat that there may well be gaps if we can't see where that information is. It's back to, do we want our officer to chase that information from third parties or progress internal complaints? So it's just with that caveat that when we see it next year, there might be one particular neighbour, a neighbour, not one particular, a neighbour that might not have that published.
Any other comments or questions before we move on to the recommendation? Councillor Gray?
Just one. May appear to be a slightly odd question, but how easy do we think it is for people to make complaints if they feel that our service isn't good enough? I'm not trying to invite problems, but on the other hand, we want to learn if we're not getting stuff right. Do you feel that if we're kind of signposting people in the right direction?
Our website is quite comprehensive, and it offers the customers, residents can submit complaints online. They can do it by letter, or indeed they can do it through calling our customer service centre, and our customer service advisors will complete that online form for them. There's also a complaints email address. That's not.
Sorry, Louise, your microphone just.
Did you hear all of that? Yeah. So there is also an email address that can be used. It's a really good question. And when you see that our local government ombudsman figures are higher than our neighbouring authorities, I do get some comfort from that, because it could be an indication of the fact that our residents are not, there's no obstacles to it. So that could be, but it's a difficult one to know. If somebody makes the effort to make a complaint, we really should be handling it well. But I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. With our residents, do they know how to? It's very much focused on web. Yeah.
Okay. So we are being invited to note the data relating to formal stage 1 and stage 2 complaints received for 24-25. Compliments received, and also the LGO local authority report for Huntingdonshire District Council 24-25. Is everyone happy? Yep, lovely, thank you. Moving on to the annual report on HTC compliance with the Information Rights Act, Freedom of Information Act, Environmental Information Regulations, and UK GDPR and Information Governance. I will be handing over to Adam for this item.
Thank you, Chair. So this is our annual report through that is mainly just to focus on how we're working in the transparency aspects of those pieces of legislation, how available our information is to the public when they submit these requests. So just to highlight a couple of areas of the report, 4.6, the policies. So these policies reviewed in 2024-25, these were existing policies, but this represents the final piece of a 2-year review we've been doing in information governance to bring our entire policy base up to date. And the generative AI policy is on there once, but it was actually reviewed twice within the calendar, within the financial year. But I didn't want to put it on there twice. Information security compliance as well. There's been a lot of movement in that within the past year, especially with the simulated phishing campaigns conducted by that team, which goes out across the entire council and really make sure that our networks are a lot more secure and staff are trained and aware of what does look like phishing. 6.3 for our request performance on subject access requests. We've only received one complaint in the past year for a subject access request, which is very positive. And I'll touch upon probably 6.5 a bit later on when linking it in with the freedom of information requests. On 7.3, you'll note there has been an uptick in incidents this year, but the reported to the Information Commissioner's Office has remained static, which to me paints a positive picture that staff feel empowered to raise concerns or suspected information breaches, which helps me and the team pick up learning themes that are emerging in the kind of incidents that happen throughout the organisation. But you'll see in 7.4 that the vast majority of information breaches within our organisation are through inappropriate disclosure. So moving on to 8.4, this is the figures that stick out the most. Freedom of information requests, year on year, there's been a 19% decrease. So we are undertaking a bit of a data validation exercise because financial year 23-24 is when we had a changeover to a new system, and it's a significant decrease there, which means that there's probably some underlying theme or cause that we'd like to pick up on. So we're going to go back through and pick up on whether all the data that was ingested when we transferred over to the new system was done correctly. But the response times remain static for this year, and we do also include withdrawn requests within that response time. So where we seek clarification from a requester and they don't respond to us, that's also counted within our response times. And moving on to last but not least, 8.9, touched upon it earlier, no ICO complaints for any information requests throughout the year, both in freedom of information and subject access requests. That is very positive for us. I don't think this is a position that the organisation has been in for a number of years. That shows the quality of responses that recipients are receiving when they put these requests in. That shows that our internal review process has a level of robustness that there isn't a need to escalate that on to the Information Commissioner's Office. And looking forward, we are working towards policy and risk frameworks for information security. So we've done all those policy reviews. We're looking forward to next steps. How do we strengthen our policy framework and make sure we're meeting the needs of the organisation there? Open to any questions.
Any comments or questions? Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. So obviously looking at the FOI and EIR requests, obviously I noticed that 3 of them exceeded reasonable limits. Do we have a specific criteria for what is deemed reasonable? Are you a certain amount of man hours estimated or something along those lines?
Yeah, Yeah, that's specified within the legislation. It's over 18 hours of work, which will be required to collate the information. So usually when we go back to requesters with that, we do clarify, this is over 18 hours of work. Here's how you would get it under. Here's how you could narrow your request to make it accessible.
Councillor Gray.
On 7.3, Adam, thank you for the report, by the way. Nice and wide-ranging and lots of data in there, which is good. I mean, you alluded to this in the short presentation you've just given us. I mean, obviously, to go from 20 data breaches to 30 is quite a significant increase in a year. And pleasingly, it doesn't look like there was anything too dramatic in there. And you did touch on trying to sort of get to finding out what the issue is here. I mean, these all relate specifically to HDC, despite it being across there. So I suppose what I'm wondering is what action's actually being taken to get top side of this, because it looks like people are just kind of emailing. We all know how easy it is to kind of email stuff out and then suddenly think, maybe I shouldn't have said that, or written that, or I've sent it to the wrong person, and then you can't get it back. So how are we kind of addressing that? Because I wouldn't want to see 30 go to 50 next year, for example.
Yep, there's always, I think, in comparison to the level of emails we do send out, we're roughly across the entire 3 councils that 3 CICT represents, 3 million in a year. 30 is a very small subset of that. So what we have been doing within the past year is trying to pick up those target areas where it's a specific service. Why is it that service? Is it a focus of the resource within the teams? Is the training not there? Is there a part of the process that doesn't work that puts additional pressure? So we've been rolling out specific targeted training to some services. We've been increasing our knowledge base with removing autocomplete off email addresses, which is the root source of some of the instance as well. And again, looking at some systems, because not all of these will have been based off the email system. Some of them will be sent out from another system or emailed incorrectly, not accurately updated. So where we can pick out a theme where there's 2 or 3 in a pattern, we've been targeting those ad hoc throughout the year and targeting training where there's been services that do need that support a bit more. But just to highlight, if this number did increase, I would still see that as positive, because what we have seen throughout the year is the very high incidents have been rather low, and those very low incidents have started coming through, and the more information we can receive as a team lets us get out there and target those kind of incidents more.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. And if I may add to what Adam has also said, is raising the profile within the organisation around self-referral, because actually in a robust corporate governance environment, we don't want people to be fearful of reporting, because otherwise we can't monitor trends or understand system failure. So we talk a lot more as managers around data breaches and actually learning opportunities. And I think that's something we see. Management team, just as an example, Adam comes and presents more regularly. And again, it's just making sure that people are aware that it's better to self-report than think, oh, perhaps not need to, not be brave enough to report.
Councillor Gray.
Thank you. That's very reassuring answer, just on a similar but slightly different tack. What controls are in place if people start emailing stuff out to themselves or to other people that they potentially shouldn't be doing? How do you, I mean, if suddenly, I mean, we have controls where I work where occasionally I'll get a tap on the shoulder saying so-and-so seems to be sending an awful lot of files. What's going on here? Do you have something similar in place here?
Just before we do that, are we moving into the exempt item? So, cybersecurity, the exempt item. If you would like to have some of that answer could fall within, because it's about.
Yeah, so we can move into. Okay. No, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move to the recommendation for this item, which is that we are noting the contents of the report. Is everyone happy to do so? Yeah. Thank you. Item 6, Corporate Risk Register. Anita will be presenting us with an update on this.
Thank you, Chair. So, as usual, this report provides the committee with a heat map, which relates to the current residual risk scores, as well as a summary report. And I've been supported by in the production of this report by our new risk manager, who joined the organisation on the 1st of September. And I know that the committee was interested in this appointment. Now, when the committee last met in July, it was noted that there had been no changes to the scores on the corporate risk register since the previous meeting, and the committee requested that we note any unchanged scores clearly in the reports going forwards. So you will note from the report that this is the case again, and we have duly noted this. Now, as I've explained in the report, it isn't actually unexpected that there would be no change in the status of the main corporate risks, because risks recorded at that corporate level tend to represent strategic long-term issues that in most instances you would expect to evolve slowly, as opposed to fluctuating week by week. And you will see that they are set out in the detail. So just moving into the more specifics of the report, at the last meeting, the committee expressed an interest in the risks relating to local government review. And as such, management have undertaken to provide an overview of the risk approach to LGR. So firstly, I would advise the committee that officers have undertaken an enterprise-wide review of the risks that we consider arising from LGR, and work is ongoing in terms of the identification, the control and the mitigation of those risks. RSM have been engaged by Huntingdonshire District Council to support us on this work, and we're now taking forward work to reduce the likelihood of occurrence, and that is being led by the Project Management Office. I'd also like to draw your attention to the Democracy, Governance and Risk Workstream, which was established early in this year. This workstream is actually chaired by our Chief Executive, Michelle, and it's very much a collaborative workstream. It's been set up by the 7 local authorities within the Cambridge and Peterborough area for this programme of work. And this workstream sits underneath the existing LGR Chief Executive and Leaders meeting, and the work stream very much feeds up into this. So whilst we are in the proposal phase of local government reorganisation, the work stream retains the responsibility for ensuring legal compliance within the programme of work, and also maintaining oversight of the key risks and providing sort of mitigating steps where appropriate, just to make sure that we're in alignment on a number of governance related points as a region. And 2 subgroups have been set up by the work stream, and they cover data sharing arrangements and contract management. So I hope that that's a helpful précis of the report, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Do we have any comments or questions? Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. I think the summary of risks is quite helpful. Showing it this way, it's certainly a lot clearer than it used to be. I guess I just want to confirm my understanding is between the inherent residual and target priority that the residual is where we are now with the mitigating factors that we put in, but the target is where we'd like to be. Is that That's right. Okay, so 7 of those risks where we are with the residual now have got a target that are lower risk, i.e. a lower colour. And if you include the LGR one, which is the same colour, there are 8 with a lower number when you get to the target as opposed to the residual priority. Half of those get to that target by reducing the impact, and half of them get to that target by reducing the likelihood part of the calculation. But I guess my question is, how achievable are these target residual amounts? How much effort do they involve the council putting in to move from where we are now to where we would like to be at the end? And is there some of these, to me, would seem to be more important use of council resources than other, or, perhaps more higher priority, i.e. trying to get the fraud down to a green, to me, would perhaps seem to be more important than trying to get the DEI down to a green. Sorry if that was a rather multi-parted question.
Thank you. So can I just seek a little bit of clarity on the second part of that question? It's about how much resource we're going to apply to each one and how we go about taking the decision. Is that right?
I guess is the target a nice to have long-term target that we'd like to get to, or is this a realistic target that we can put resource in the medium, the short to medium term to actually get down to those residuals?
So if I may clarify, so in a sense, have we prioritised the resource that goes into those, so that the one that has the most impact, we would say we're targeting the most resource compared to the one that has the least impact, and therefore is less of a priority to get to the target outcome?
Councillor Hodgson-Jones?
Yeah. On the same general point, I think...
Yeah.
Do you want to respond? And then
Sorry,
we'll
just
come back.
Do you want to respond to that, or should we take that away as a...
I think that Michelle's provided really sort of helpful answer in terms of what we can provide tonight. Could I take that away? Because I think the context of risk, when it's so broadly enterprise and it is LGR, how you're going to prioritise and how you're going to apply different resource depends on the service area.
And sorry, may I check? And do you mean for all of the risks or just LGR? All of them? Sorry.
Sorry, the risk that we're looking to reduce, if I look at the cyber risk, we're at a residual of high, but the lowest that we can reduce that to, it's in that target priority. We're not reducing either the impact, or we're reducing the score for impact, or we're reducing the score for likelihood. But 8 of them we are reducing one or other of those numbers. But to reduce one or other of those numbers requires council's resource to do so. And it's a question of how much resource, where's the trade-off between what resource we're putting into mitigating risks as to what the impact of not mitigating those risks and using those resources somewhere else are.
I think, if I may, Chair, it's probably better that we send a written answer around about that, rather than just mindful of understanding all the different components of that. In terms of the risk. So I think it would be, if Chair and the committee are in agreement with that Anita will be able to seek clarification from the team and the broader heads of service who have ownership of those risks.
Is everyone happy that we receive that written? Councillor Hodgson-Jones?
Yes, my comment was that when corporate risk registers were first being introduced into councils, my recollection was that there was a tendency to believe that the object of the exercise was to eliminate risk. I think that's broadly now understood that that's not what you're trying to achieve, and that's not what you're trying to do. But there is always that trade-off between the cost and the benefit. And quite often, most of the action that focuses on risk mitigation is on reducing the impact rather than reducing the likelihood. And I think it would be helpful to know which risks have, where the actions to mitigate that risk have looked at the likelihood and how to reduce the likelihood. Because if you reduce the likelihood, you will also reduce the impact. Whereas if you focus on the impact, you won't necessarily affect the likelihood. And I think that that's an aspect that needs to be taken into when you're looking at what actions are we doing. And then you might decide that you can live with a higher net residual score if you've reduced the likelihood where if there is an impact, it's likely to be high, but you've made the likelihood so low that it's a risk that you can live with, which is less detrimental to the council than regular low impact events.
And if I may, Chair, I completely agree with you, Councillor Hodson-Jones, and I think, again, that's why when you're looking at that mitigation, actually, if you can improve the system and the process to reduce, because impact often is, if we looked at strategic flooding, we're never going to be able to change that because the impact is the impact. But actually what we can do is earlier warning, that kind of thing that has an impact in respect of reducing that for those that may be involved in that. So we're definitely in that mindset for sure. And I think you're absolutely right to recognise that it is no longer about removing all risk, because the risk versus reward of that is often not cost effective for the level of resource required to actually reduce all risk, when actually the impact of might be tolerated as business as usual. So definitely for that assurance, that is very much something in the language that we as your officers are aware of as well.
Councillor Gray.
One of the great advantages of LGR is that the probability of my village flooding when all the drains are blocked is very high. But with LGR, Michelle, you're going to sort it out. It's not going to happen anymore. That wasn't my point, but I thought I'd just get it in there. Just a minor thing, failure to recruit, develop, support, retain high-quality staff. The target priority for that is low. Can I just suggest that might be worth sort of revisiting? Because the idea that is ever going to be sort of infrequent and, sorry, just get my lexicon right here, minor and unlikely, I think is probably a bit unrealistic in my personal opinion, but you may have different views.
So, Chair, if I may, coincidentally, today we've had a workshop session around linked to workforce strategy. So again, thinking of one of the pillars for that was retention and recruitment, but we have reviewed that in the context of the LGR framework, and there have been some further discussions that have come through that in terms of proposals and again, different ways that we deal with recruitment, how we might look at succession planning, how we look at personal development, all those things that either help us reduce people leaving and retain talent, or make us an attractive organisation. I think we've got employment committee in a couple of weeks' time, and the stats for there in terms of recruitment are shared. And again, I think I am very proud to be able to share with you, when we're out to recruit at the moment, HDC has a very strong brand. We get high numbers of quality candidates. Now, again, there are still niche areas that are problematic in recruitment because there is just a lack of talent in the sector. But actually what we're seeing is positive recruitment when HDC goes to market. And again, I think that is all part of that working and ensuring that our brand is strong in terms of an attractive employer, but also the way our structures are, like, such things as corporate governance. People want to see structures are good where they may choose to come to work.
But could I say that even if we get to a world where it's minor, so okay, you've got a great, you've got this place running exactly how you want it to be. You've got great talented people here. One of the things I know you're passionate about, that I'm passionate about, is developing talented people, and talented people sometimes have to move on to become more talented. So is it may well, I think the aim should be that the impact on the organisation is minor, but I think, is it ever going to be unlikely that we're going to lose people? I think it's likely that there are always going to be people moving on, good people moving on, and perhaps less good people moving on for different reasons. So anyway, I'm reassured by what you say, and I'll leave my comment there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any final comments or questions? Okay, so we will refer to the recommendation, which is to obviously comment on the reports in the appendices and also progress with risk management. Is everyone happy that we note that? Thank you. Moving to item 7, the internal audit update report. Dan, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So page 57 of my report, just a reminder, sort of twofold purpose of this paper. One is to just appraise the committee of where we are in the delivery of the 25-26 internal audit plan. The second purpose is to just sort of give you an early indication if there are any weaknesses that might impact my year-end opinion. So you can see on page 57, we're making good progress in line with the sort of agreed plan. So we've finalised 7 reviews since the last meeting. We've also issued a further report in draft. You can see there that 5 of those 7 have come through with a partial assurance opinion. 2 of those have come through with a reasonable assurance opinion. And if I may, I'll just skip over the findings for the moment, but just to go to the appendices. So Appendix A, page 66, that then gives you the overall assessment of the agreed programme of work. So 8 finals issued to date, 1 draft report, 4 reviews in progress. But important to still note that we've still got sort of 14, so 2/3 of the plan still to come through to you. So that just needs to be balanced off. We've had some minor changes to the timing of some reviews there, just at Appendix B, but nothing has, no audits have been cancelled or indeed replaced. I would report those through to you. The training and management support of the in-house team, that continues. I know you'd sort of expressed some interest in that previously, so that very much sort of continues. We continue to sort of supervise the work of the in-house team, as well as delivering reviews ourselves. So in terms of the sort of the main body of the report there, where I'm starting on page 59, I mentioned we've got those 5 partial assurance reviews, the 2 reasonable assurance reviews since the last meeting. We've agreed 4 high, 29 medium, 28 low priority actions, and you requested previously that we included details of the high priority actions, which we've now incorporated within the review. So you can see that they've all got responsible officers, implementation dates have been agreed. I think it's also important to mention, and but both Michelle and Suzanne have sort of made this point when we presented the plan. A number of these areas haven't been audited in recent years. So, for example, 4 of the 7 reviews that we're seeing this evening haven't been reviewed in the last 3 financial years. So it is perhaps not a surprise that we are coming through with findings, agreeing a number of management actions. Nonetheless, I think the importance of the next paper on your agenda becomes of real sort of significance, both for officers, and we're reporting regularly through to CLT, through to the heads of service around the implementation of management actions, and obviously you get that report here, but I would sort of stress that's obviously very important as we agree all of these management actions, that you are then cited on the progress that is being made. So in just the final comment I was going to make. So obviously the sort of the year-to-date programme of work, we have issued sort of 6 partial assurance, so 6 negative, 2 positive opinions. So clearly there will be some impact to that year-end opinion already. But as I mentioned earlier, we've still got quite a big body of the programme to implement. I think the other thing that isn't clear from the paper, but I've just done some analysis behind the scenes, I think with the exception of one of the reviews, all of the management actions in tonight's final reports have all got implementation dates between October and December. So that's sort of a key point that's not within my paper, but I think it gives members sight of the fact that there are some sort of quite rigorous and tight dates that have been agreed to actually sort of get on top of some of these issues and some of the control weaknesses or compliance issues that have been identified. We'll sort of collectively come back to you, A, through my work, but B, through the other sort of officer papers on the progress against the actions. So I'll take the remainder of the paper as read in terms of the detail, but that hopefully just gives you a good summary of where we are with the programme.
Thank you. Once again, I'm going to open this up to members for questions and comments. Councillor Hodgson-Jones.
Yes, Dan, you just mentioned that the management actions in the 7 reports that were just had their final reports where they are have got fairly tight timetables. My question is, given that when we get onto the next report, there are a lot of management actions that are still hanging around a long time after they were supposed to have been completed, are you setting up the various teams for failure, and are we going to find in the middle of next year that these management actions are trailing because you've set an overzealous target, or are these targets realistic and accepted as realistic by the officers who've got to implement them?
Just for some clarity there, it's the officers that agree the actions that actually also agree the dates. So I think what we would do is provide challenge. If, for example, there was a high priority action that was a 2028 implementation date, for example, we would have a robust discussion around, well, why is it going to take 3 years to implement such a potential sort of high impact or high risk issue? So the actions, as I say, are agreed along with the dates with the officers. I think, to be fair, time will tell, given that what we've got here now is a programme of work that is building up ahead of steam, and obviously, as you can see, is coming through with quite a few management actions. But I refer back to, I think it was not the meeting before that, where Michelle, I think, made the point that there's a significant number of audits. I think it felt rightly in this year's programme. With that, obviously, comes potentially significant number of actions. So it's why really I emphasised, I think we collectively need to really sort of pay attention to that, in particular the next paper that gives that analysis.
Yeah, of course.
Just to follow up on that is a question of capacity and prioritisation, because if management are focused on delivering these action items, is there a risk that might take their eye off other balls that might need to have the same level of attention, if not more? I mean, obviously, where we've got a high risk item, we want to address it as quickly and as effectively as possible, but we don't want to distract managers from dealing with other important issues. So my question is around, do you believe that the capacity exists to actually deliver these things? I mean, it's all very well the managers accepting the target, but are you confident that the capacity exists to actually deliver it?
Yeah, I mean, I understand the question. It's a good question. I'm not sure I can sort of stand here this evening and say there's capacity to implement every action within every implementation date. But I use my sort of words carefully earlier, whereby, when we debrief a finding, we try and agree this is what we believe the risk exposure is. We then try and agree the action. There's an opportunity not to act and to accept a risk. And so if, for example, there wasn't the resource or there was competing resource, that option is open to officers or to the sponsor of an audit. Now, to date, we've not incurred that scenario. So I think, to be fair, because obviously we're still it's still early days for us working with the council. I think probably the year end will give us a really good feel for whether or not we've sort of, let's say, collectively been too ambitious with some of those implementation dates. So I think we will find out through the sort of next 2 committee meetings whether or not we're on track with the dates that have already been agreed, and or whether some of the reasons might be sort of capacity, as opposed to sometimes there's just a willingness to want to do something, but you can't always do everything.
And I think just to add, Michelle, if you just want to come in.
I think it's probably helpful for me then to give the other side of that, because obviously Dan can't necessarily answer the resources. So I think a few things I'd like to just follow on from Dan. When the officers are agreeing with the auditor, again, in terms of outcomes, it is a conversation. And so there is a reasonable expectation. It's not imposed and said you will do this without having any regard to business as usual. I think in our current climate, it would be remiss of me not to say in the next 12 months, there's likely to be lots of things that come curveball with the whole LGR situation. And I am very mindful of that in terms of capacity for our workforce. And again, linking back to Councillor Gray's point around recruitment and retention, because that becomes really critical when you are in an LGR situation to retain staff in order to do business as usual as well as actions. But a couple of other things I think it's important. Dan has referenced the priority actions, and I'll give you an example. I have a priority action in the hybrid working, and there was a request that could we delay implementation, and I was very clear on that and said no. For these reasons, implementation will be in January, because that was when I worked with Alistair to agree some of those priorities. That for me wasn't appropriate, and I did not want that to, because it was a priority action, for me the justification in delaying that was not appropriate. So again, it will be horses for courses. There may well be some medium or low priorities that actually, in terms of that competing with business as usual, if there is a justified and valid reason, it would not be unreasonable or a risk to corporate governance in order to extend that period. And I think that will be a case-by-case discussion, which I think, as Dana said, you will start to see coming through. I think there's also more accountability, if I can also say, around where completing of the actions sit. So if I reflect back to when I first joined HDC, and in fact this was my first committee, there were an enormous number of non-complete actions. And as you unpicked that, you found there was if I may say, a lack of ownership. And actually, if no one owns it, no one's going to where does the accountability to deliver it? I think through the work that we're doing with RSM and through the training and development of our managers, that accountability is much more owned now, and therefore there is clear accountability for delivering that. So therefore we start to see that change the culture as well. So I think, as Dan said, next 2 sessions, next 2 reports will be indicative, and then year end in terms of how that culture is embedding in terms of internal audit. But yes, I won't say capacity is a breeze, because things do keep coming left ball at the moment, curveball, left ball. So yes, but we are absolutely focused on ensuring that that is not an excuse not to deliver completion of those outcomes.
Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Chair. My question is specifically about the report on data quality and performance management. And firstly, I think just a general comment that it's nice to see that the scrutiny panel's insistence on trying to get involved in setting those targets at an earlier stage has been recognised in the report. But I think I have a question, really, it's probably for the Chief Executive rather than the internal audit. It points out in the significant finding that there were discrepancies for two of the performance indicator in terms of data quality. But in the management actions, there's nothing about going back to the scrutiny panel that looks at those performance indicators to let them know that there's been any sort of data quality issues in the indicators that they have been scrutinising. So I wonder whether it might be pertinent for that to be added to the next report, just to give the panel some context of where they are.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings. I'll take that as an action myself to make sure that is fed back to the appropriate scrutiny committee. And if it doesn't get onto the work plan in terms of an item to be discussed, that at least there is visibility of that for the relevant ONS committee.
Any final comments, Councillor Gray, and then Councillor Shaw?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Two comments, and then a question. So, firstly, can I say that I think this is a really big step change that's been made here in the last few months. So, Dan, I want to thank you and your team for that, because we've moved. And Suzanne isn't here, but she's obviously been fairly instrumental in that as well. We've moved very significantly, I think, in the right direction here, and. Yeah, there's lots of partial assurances and there's lots of things in here that we can kind of comment on, and there are actions to be done. But that's good, because we now know that they need to be done. And we've gone in there and we've looked at them, and we're getting ourselves assurance to get into the right place. So if I can say thank you to you and your team for the work that's been done there, at the risk of saying I told you so, it doesn't wholly surprise me that under the procurement one there that we haven't quite got ourselves to where we needed to be, despite many questions that have been raised at this panel, often by myself, over the last at least a year, if not longer, about the new Act coming in there. And I'll just leave that one there. Going back to the, clearly what we're seeing here is edited highlights. You've got a lot of data, you've got lots of work there, and presumably each of these goes through an iterative process of you putting down your findings and then management coming back with their responses to those findings, and there being a little bit of kind of backwards and forwards between the two of you to kind of get to the outcomes that you need to. Can you tell me where the Executive Council of Governance fits into this? Because who's looking to make sure, you're the third line, you're the second line, who's kind of keeping an eye on that process and just kind of making sure that it's happening as it should? Where does Councillor Harvey fit into all of this? I'd ask her if she was here, but I'll ask you.
So I have actually spoken to Councillor Harvey earlier on this year with a view to sort of briefing Councillor Harvey on the programme of work that we're delivering. Obviously, these papers are also available. I think in terms of the overarching, clearly, I have a direct line to the Chief Executive in terms of under the standards. So I've absolutely got that direct line. I've also got direct lines to the statutory officers, so there's the opportunity there for sort of all three statutory officers to feed in. And clearly this committee has got a key role in ensuring that we're delivering against the plan that you've approved and so on and so forth. So to be fair, I'm just trying to think whether I've got a sort of a mid-year update meeting in with Councillor Harvey. To be honest, I don't want to mislead you and say I have if I haven't, so I can go back and check on that. But there certainly is a line of communication open between myself and sort of the lead councillor for governance.
Okay, so once again, we're going to refer to the recommendation, which is to comment on and note the update on work undertaken by internal audit up until the end of September 2025. Is everyone happy? You want to come in? Sorry. Okay, moving on to item 8, the internal audit actions update report. Anita is going to present on this item for us.
Thank you, Chair. So, as usual, this report summarises the progress in implementing management actions. Now, at the last meeting, the committee asked us to do some work to ensure that the action titles are fully capturing the action summary. So we have done some further training on this and worked on our understanding, and you'll see that we have enhanced the appendix set out in the report, and I hope that that is helpful to you. You'll also note that the committee requested that we set out detail in terms of the high-risk actions. So I hope in the first instance I can give the committee some assurance that we really have been listening very carefully to what you've been saying and trying to be proactive and refine our work in terms of the action reporting. Now, moving into the detail of the report, the committee has expressed an interest in procurement, and so I have looked to provide significant detail on the work that I have been undertaking since I joined the organisation about 11 weeks ago. I'm very pleased to report to the committee that since we last met, I have undertaken a successful recruitment exercise, and I've appointed a very experienced local government procurement manager who will be joining the organisation on the 1st of December. And as you would expect, he will be tasked with supporting me in the delivery against the audit-related actions moving forwards. I personally have implemented a number of changes in terms of our systems and processes, particularly for the procurement board, and personally I do feel that those changes are being felt positively. I do think it's right actually that I put on record my thanks to RSM who were concluding their audit on procurement and contract management actually as I joined the organisation, and I have to say have been very helpful in terms of being that strategic tool that internal audit can be as we look to continue our service refinement in this area. I will stop there for questions because I appreciate that there's a number of different areas covered. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just before I open this up, I do just want to make everyone aware that if there are any questions or comments relating to Appendix 2, within the agenda packs that you've been provided with, I will propose that we go into a part 2, which is in accordance with the wording on the agenda. So if you could bear that in mind with your questions and just make me aware if it does relate to Appendix 2 before you ask the question. So I'm going to open it up. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. I was just looking at the table 3.2 on page 72 of the report. Action 1625 overtime. I was just curious what action this came from. Was it from retention and recruitment or the home and hybrid working?
I'm sorry, can you just speak up?
Sorry, so table 3.2, action 1625, it mentions overtime, but I don't think that was a separate audit specifically. Was that a result from the recruitment and retention audit or home and hybrid working, or was I slightly confused?
I'd have to double check if it was recruitment and retention or it potentially could have been hybrid, but I'm not sure. Can I just double check on that one for you?
You can come back to me with a written response if you like, that's fine.
Yeah, just a very quick one. It's welcome to have the ongoing actions that are in 3.2, but one of the things that it would be helpful to have, it's only a small thing, is to note how many open actions were closed in the last quarter and are no longer open, because otherwise we're constantly looking at the same open actions and feel that we're not actually getting anywhere. But if we can actually see how many are being closed, that would be helpful.
Thank you. I'll certainly take that away. As we've sort of discussed at committee last time, we are on a journey in terms of our learning on the system. So I will look forward to that challenge. So thank you. That's a really helpful suggestion.
Any comments from anyone else? Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. Same table, 3.2. Obviously, we've had a couple of dates that have been knocked back from the previous report just by, say, a couple of months or so. How confident are we that these revised dates will not need to be knocked back again?
Thank you. Are you referring to any particular actions in that, just so I can be more specific? Is it the procurement ones?
I've got Code of Procurement twice, and then the key financial controls have both been knocked back slightly.
Okay, if I could take the procurement actions, and I might look to my colleague Sharon to feedback in terms of the key financial controls. I'm reasonably confident that I can undertake these. I mean, I referred to the comments earlier by the Chief Executive that there is a significant amount of work that is ongoing at the moment that we are having to accommodate. So capacity-wise, things are challenging. Specifically in terms of the revised Code of Procurement, you will see that we have moved that back until the end of December. I have got, as you know, my new procurement manager joining on the 1st of December, and that's clearly going to be a key priority for them. We've undertaken some initial work on the redrafting of that. What I would say is that I think it's right that we do this well. We've got our internal processes in place. I have every intention to complete this by the end of December, but I will be very open with the committee if I need a little bit more time to do that. In terms of the governance touch points, there's a number of steps that amending a constitution has to go through, which is that initial officer work, the constitution working group, this committee, and then full council. So I hope that I can, just say that there are a number of other steps that are included, as well as actually what is an important and significant piece of work.
Any final comments before we move forward? Okay, so moving on to our recommendation, this is to comment on and note the current position regarding actions arising from internal audit reports. Is everyone happy to move on? Yep, thank you. Item 9, approval for the publication of the annual governance statement for 24-25 and annual financial report for 24-25. And I'm going to hand over to Sharon, who will introduce this item to us.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm absolutely delighted to be able to present the almost final statement of accounts for 24-25. Since the draft statement of accounts were presented to committee back in June, we have been undergoing our external audit. It's pretty complete. There are a few areas where the audit papers are still being reviewed, and there are a couple of outstanding requests for information from us, but I'm not anticipating any changes. The changes that we have made from the draft accounts relate to pensions disclosure, but there's no actual change in the overall liability. And there was one change to the valuation of the mobile home park and a few disclosure notes that needed to be changed. Included within the agenda papers, there is a management representations letter which details our responsibilities to the auditors. Within there is a table of unadjusted differences. We have detailed the reasons why we haven't made these adjustments. But it's, for myself, it's probably one of the cleanest audits that I've been involved in at HDC. And I'll pass over to Ernst Young to talk you through their audit report.
Thank you, Sharon. So I think Sharon summed it up quite well, actually. So the audit is substantially complete, and there are a few bits of review to finalise, and I think it's worth pointing out that the main outstanding query is perhaps nothing that is within Sharon's control. So as part of our audit, as you're aware, we always write to the auditors of the pension fund to get assurances over the assets and the council's share, and we're not expecting that through until the end of October. So there will be a slight delay in signing the opinion, but as Sharon suggested, we're not expecting that would result in any changes to the financial statements. My intention, it's a very long report, as it always is, so I'll take the committee through the executive summary and some of the appendices are probably the bits that you're most interested in this year, I would suspect. So I'll talk through some of those, and then Julia and I are very happy to answer any questions on any element of the work as we go through. So I think the key page of the executive summary is page 7. We've talked about the status of our financial statements audit. The next section down is around value for money, and this really links on to the discussion we've just had around internal audit. So members will recall that last year we reported a significant weakness in governance arrangements, and that was around the effectiveness of the internal audit provision in 23-24. And we've talked a lot in committee about the huge changes that have been made. And I think we highlighted at the planning stage that because a lot of those changes didn't come into effect until the end of the 2024 calendar year, those arrangements weren't necessarily in place for the full year. So we do expect to report a significant weakness in arrangements for 24-25 again, particularly linked to the disclaimed head of internal audit opinion as well, issued by internal audit for that year. I would like to point out that we have a responsibility to issue our auditor's annual report by the 30th of November, and that's the narrative, and that will be our opportunity to reflect some of the progress that perhaps has been made that we can't reflect in our actual audit opinion wording. So you'll get an opportunity to see that and reflect some of that progress in that report that will come to the November committee for that one. Sharon's picked up in terms of audit differences. There were a few. There were nothing material, which is really positive to note. And in terms of other report, and we've read through your annual governance statement, we reflect that the work on the whole of government accounts is currently in progress, but we're very much directed on that by the National Audit Office. So we're only just in the process of signing off our certificates for 23-24. Now they've issued their opinion, so that is likely to go on for a little while after we issue the opinion, but it doesn't impact your responsibilities. Your accounts are still done and audited when we do issue our opinion on the financial statements. In terms of the areas of risk, in slide 8, we just set out where we are in terms of the areas of significant risk that we identified in our audit plan. So we had the risk of fraud and error, and that's the risk that we're required to consider in every audit. It wasn't anything specific to Huntingdon District Council, but audit and standards just require that we think about that in every audit. To address that, we always do some testing of journal entries. We'll consider the estimates that management have put in the accounts, challenge them for management bias, and think about whether any unusual transactions that we need to look at in detail. We've got nothing to raise with the committee in respect of that work programme. Similarly, the risk of fraud and revenue recognition is mandated by audit and standards as well. And for public sector bodies like yourselves, Practice Note 10, issued by the Institute of Chartered Accountants, requires us to extend that to expenditure recognition. Typically in local government, we attribute that to the inappropriate capitalisation of revenue expenditure, because that would be the way you could most meaningfully manipulate the budgeted position. So we've looked at property, plant and equipment additions, we've tested REFCUS. The team are addressing some review comments, but again, very pleased to note that we don't have anything to report to the committee in that respect. The next significant risk we had was around valuation of the land and buildings in the investment property. Again, this work is substantially complete. Sharon's mentioned the adjustment for the mobile home park. There was one other area of debate we had during the audit process around evaluation of a piece of land. And we had the same discussion that I think Sharon's been having for many years, haven't we, about valuations is always an estimate. So we could line up 5 different valuers and we would have 5 different valuations within there. I think our the view of our EY real estate team is that they think the value of that land is overstated by £1 million, but that is that's below our materiality thresholds. That's not of a level that would prevent me from signing the audit opinion. So management are comfortable, given that it's an estimate, that they don't propose to adjust it for this year. As I said, we're comfortable with that from a materiality position on the financial statements as well. The next area is IFRS 16 and Lisa's implementation. I think we've got one final query to work through on that, but at this point in time, we haven't got anything to report. This has been quite a challenging area across the sector this year, actually, in terms of IFRS 16. So it's probably not surprising that that's one of the last things that we have to close down in terms of the audit. And as I touched on earlier, the pension liability, our work on the roll forward has been done by our experts. We're just waiting on the assurance on the pension letters, which we're expecting around the end of October, but we'll keep speaking to Suzanne and the team about when we can expect to receive those through. In terms of control observations, we did have an observation around the documentation of a formal process for reaching settlement agreements, and we've obviously got the significant weakness in the effectiveness of the internal audit provision, but nothing else that we want to report at this time. And slide 10 is a really interesting one as well. So this is linked to the reset of the local audit system and our view on the more qualitative aspects of the financial statements and the audit process in terms of how timely are draft financial statements when they're produced, what is the quality of them, how do the team support the delivery of the audit, what is the quality of the audit work and papers. And I think you can see from their testament to Sharon and the team that that's a very green dashboard compared to what I see. So I think, thanks to the finance team, because we're aware, particularly with local government reorganisation, there is an awful lot going on here. But yeah, really good support to the audit. And I guess what everybody wants to know is, what does that mean in terms of my opinion this year? A drum roll. So we don't have the formal wording of the opinion, but I can talk you through what it's probably going to be like. We're going to hopefully get that signed off in the next few weeks. So I guess if I turn to Appendix B in the first instance, this is the summary of assurances. So this, you may recall, we had something similar last year, which sets out the level of assurance we'd obtained over each line item in the financial statements and each line item in the CIES last year. And, you had a really good start, I would say. Actually, you had a really positive position in terms of that movement to rebuild. So last year, we'd completed our work on big areas like property, plant and equipment, but you would never get full assurance over that because there's the impact of the disclaimer and the rolling cycle of opinions. We completed our work on investment property. You can see the greens as we go down there. In terms of the rebuilding of the assurance to get into the clean opinion, the audit of that top half of the balance sheet is really critical, because once we get assurance over the top half of the balance sheet, then we know the reserves in total must be right, and we've just got to work out how we get the classification between the reserves there. So what you can see is we've highlighted in a slightly lighter green the areas that are still going through the final review, but we do expect to receive substantial assurance over every element of your balance sheet other than property, plant and equipment, which is just a function if you've got one more year of the valuation cycle to complete before we can give that full assurance, and reserves, which is, the challenge across the sector. So as a firm, I'm leading on the development of that methodology about how we rebuild assurance. That's currently going through sign off with our professional practice department. We're not expecting a big change in strategy. We'll be doing some risk assessment work, but again, we'll be able to link in with Suzanne and the team and talk about the timing of that rebuild, because very conscious it's not very much when we can do it, but there may be additional requests that we have on the finance team. So we want to work closely with Suzanne and the team in terms of how that works. But flipping back to Appendix A, we have got what is a potential timeline based on the National Audit Office guidance. I would caveat this quite high. So if it was to follow the local audit, the National Office guidance, we would be looking at an unqualified opinion in 27-28. I think there are a few things that, again, because I've developed the methodology, I can think about here. The fact that you're on a 3-year valuation cycle rather than a 5-year valuation cycle would mean that you might get to full assurance of a property, plant and equipment a bit quicker. The areas over the balance sheet that we didn't get assurance over last year were minimal. So there's a number of options that we need to work through, but I would say that 27-28 is kind of where we'd like to get to in terms of being able to issue a completely clean opinion. But earlier than that, we should be in a position where actually it's just those comparatives where the qualification's over. By next year or the year after, we'll be moving away from a disclaimed audit opinion, because we'll have assurance over your opening position and your movements, and it will then just be what is the impact on your reserves or perhaps your comparative. So within the next couple of years, you should really see a change in the format of your opinion. But this appendix is designed to show you that there has been an awful lot of work going on by Sharon and the team, and you are on a really good track to getting back to a clean financial statements opinion again. And that's kind of all I want to say, but very happy to take questions on the audit or the work.
So do we have any questions or comments? Councillor Hodgson-Jones.
Thank you. If I could take you back to the valuation of Paxton Pits, which you've identified as there's a variation in the valuation. It's the question of materiality. Now, I appreciate that a £1 million difference in overall valuation of property may not be material for the council overall. But what I'd be interested to know is whether that £1 million variation in valuation is the difference between a property worth 1.1 million or a property worth 101 million, because i.e. how material in relation to Paxton Pits is that 1 million overvaluation?
I don't know if you have that level of detail at hand, Julia. Sharon.
Yes, Sharon, you want to come in there.
So we've had a few conversations around this. Paxton Pits 3 years ago was valued at £2.8 million, and that was audited, and it was assured. I don't know what the correct word is. Not approved, but the auditors, I can remember, did ask a lot of questions around it because we had to go back and find maps. Last year, we asked for it to be valued again, and it was reduced in value by 200,000. But now we're being asked to reduce it again by another million. And the argument was how can it have changed that much, really, since the last valuation? And I come back, it's only worth as much as someone's ever going to pay for it, and it's never going to be for sale. And our valuers will have valued it based on local knowledge, whereas Ernst Young, it's a world-renowned nature reserve. People come from across the world to visit. And Ernst Young, obviously, are looking at lots and lots of properties, probably not that many nature reserves that are world-renowned. So it's a difference of opinion. Can say no more.
Any Councillor Jennings?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Claire, for your report, and thank you, Sharon, for your final swan song. But if I could just take you to page 121 in our report, it's 29 in yours, Claire, and it talks under other reporting issues about that management brought to your attention an instance of non-compliance with laws and regulations that you're continuing to keep under review. Is the situation still that non-compliance has any impact on the financial statements? And I don't know how much detail we are allowed to go into in this session about what that non-compliance relates to.
So I won't refer to what it relates to, but what I can say is at the moment we don't think it does have an impact on the financial statements. We just need to keep that up to review until the date of the opinion.
Any other comments? No. Oh, Councillor Jennings?
May I ask a general conceptual question that relates to LGR and what happens to audit opinions once if LGR comes in, assuming that new authorities are created out of existing authorities. You know, I've not been through an LGR process. Clearly, I've been through corporate restructuring and M&A in the business world. Are the new councils treated from an accounting point of view and from a financial statements point of view as effectively being mergers of existing entities that are being brought together in sort of merger accounting? And if so, do the audit opinions that you or your other colleagues in the industry that will be giving on the new entities, will they therefore be taking account of the audit opinions that were on the existing entities that go to make up those new entities, and therefore will they all be subject to the lowest common denominator of which of those entities has gone into the LGR that's got the worst audit opinion, because that will therefore be the level at which you can't take any assurance?
It's really complex, and it has happened actually further north in the country that I'm aware of, where we audited some districts. So it is effective. It's like a machinery of government change, but it is a bit like merger accounting in the corporate world. And the disclaimed opinions, whoever audits the new merged body will need to take consideration of that fact. Obviously, when you've got a number of districts going in, there might be individual ones that aren't material. whether it's us or another audit firm, we need to work through that. I think as a firm, we are very conscious about the impact that local government reorganisation would have. So we've done a data collection across our full portfolio. So I've filled it in for you, saying, where are we in terms of opinion? What do we think likely LGR timeline is? And when we come back to the rebuilding of assurance, clearly as an audit firm, we can't rebuild everybody in 1 year. But what we are trying to do is prioritise and look at and who is going to be the most impacted by local government reorganisation. So we're refining that over the next couple of months, to be really specific about who is potentially going into a new body, who is potentially going to be the main body, and trying to do some kind of prioritisation, because, as you say, it would be incredibly difficult for the new authority and the auditor for the new authority should they have a whole host of disclaimed opinions. So we're very, very conscious of that fact, that it's coming in along the line in the next few years.
Councillor Hodgson-Jones.
Yes, on that point, Claire, I presume you're going to be approaching that with an open mind, because you may well have a new authority that consists of 4, 5, 6 constituent authorities, some of which may have got good, clean accounts and some of which may have pretty shoddy accounts. But the reality is that an organisation that has run its accounting and its financial affairs well might actually get knocked over by something as drastic as local government reorganisation. So just because an entity had clean accounts beforehand doesn't mean that they will remain clean in the new body if it's not adapted to the introduction of lots of new systems and incompatibility of systems, not just financial systems and accounting systems, but all sorts of other systems, and incompatibility of culture may take a body from being clean and efficient to being inefficient and a mess.
Yeah, we do see that, and as we approach local government reorganisation, when I've experienced this in the past, we sometimes highlight it as not seeing it as a significant risk of weakness, but that's the sort of thing that we'll be picking up in our value for money thinking as we move towards local government reorganisation, because, like I say, it is challenging for management to do and to realign the systems, but that's something that, again, that we'll have our eye on over the next few years as we go.
Yes, of course. Go.
Thank you, Chair. And if I may just continue the theme of LGR, it's one of those aspects that as the implementation plan comes into being for between now and vesting day, but also as part of that, there will be, one would expect, a 5-year transformation plan for the new unitary, because that's where those key component pieces of work will come into play. So again, Anita's already mentioned, just as a small part in one of the reports today, that we now have a subcommittee of the governance, democracy and risk work stream, which is specifically around procurement, because we know that one of the risks of a new unitary is not having sufficiently mapped out the existing contracts, not having looked to take economies of scale prior to vesting day, and then and letting longer contracts than perhaps would be good practice before vesting day that then bind the new unitary. So that's just one aspect of that value for money consideration that we are already thinking of. Now, that's just one of a whole multitude, but it is going to be complex. But I think if I can give you an assurance that as your officers, we're already in that space, and we are seeking to, I use a phrase, due diligence. That would be my legal background, but that due diligence of what we can get done now, make hay while the sun shines, so that we are, when we're in that really tense, safe and legal on day one of vesting day, we've already been able to secure some of those advantages that mean that bringing together. And I think the one thing I would say about language in this is that in the corporate world, it would be a merger. In our world, it's not, because there will be no remaining entity that exists. Each new unitary will be a brand new. So all the legislation will talk about successor in title, and as such, because it is a new. So if there is, hypothetically, a partner that thinks that it will be continuing its own systems post-unitary, that is not going to be the case, because that will not deliver transformation in line with what our external auditors will be looking for value for money. It's an opportunity to properly reset those systems, if that's helpful.
Thank you. So moving on to the recommendations, which we're going to take collectively. I'll just run through those so everyone's clear. It's to receive and discuss the completion report for those charged with the governance 24-25, approve the annual governance statement, and authorise the executive leader and chief executive officer to sign the statement on behalf of the council, approve the letter of representation and authorise the corporate director as Section 151 officer to sign it on behalf of the council, to give delegated powers to chair of committee and the corporate director as Section 151 officer to authorise and sign the annual financial report for 24-25, and to give delegated powers to the corporate director of finance and resources in conjunction with the chair of this committee to ensure that any minor amendments to the statement of accounts are completed before final publication. Is everyone in agreement? Yep. Lovely. Thank you. Item 10, the annual report of the Corporate Governance Committee. I'm going to introduce this one, so I'm going to hand over to myself. And obviously I will open this up again to questions and comments as we go through. You will already be aware that we present the annual report to Council of the work that we undertake across each year. You have seen the report. This is something that I've compiled, not solely on my own, but with a lot of help from officers and information being provided to me to make sure that is accurate. It is a summary of the work that we've undertaken across the 24-25 period, along with any issues that were identified. I'm just going to leave it there. What I will say, though, is that if there are any changes or anything that anybody would like to raise, please do so. So I'm going to open this up. Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Chair, for your report.
Absolute pleasure.
I think there's one thing just jumped out at me really, which was in the annual report itself. It talks about the six headings where it says that the CACPS sets out the purposes, blah, blah, blah. It details outputs that must be established and evidenced, and then gives 6 headings, but only 4 of them have actually got any evidence. It doesn't. 4 of them then take on the subheadings below, but there's nothing about audit committee membership, and there's nothing about impact. And I think in previous years there'd been something, a paragraph under each of those headings. So I don't know whether something really ought to be added in about the membership of this committee. I mean, I know during this audit year, the composition of this committee changed in terms of membership numbers. So I don't know whether that might come under the audit committee membership or under the impact. Clearly, again, having a fewer number of people sitting around this table may have had an impact on impact.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Anything from anyone else? Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I suppose I would say that I feel that kind of glosses over, if I might say that, and say it deliberately, the disclaimed audit and what was effectively a complete breakdown in the third line of defence. It talks about substantial work on the enhanced review and implementation of the internal audit actions has taken place, but Dan only turned up in January of this year. Prior to that, it was all over the place. And I don't feel that we're kind of adequately, given that this is a report of our committee to the wider council, I don't think we're really sort of highlighting, 2 of the big issues that we've really had to grapple with throughout the course of this year in adequate detail, because, the reason why we've got disclaimed accounts is because we've got a value for money issue, is because we didn't primarily, there are other reasons, but primarily it was that lack of internal audit, effective internal audit function. So I feel that we should be more explicit than we have been. We're being very sort of generalist, I think, here. The one other thing that I did think was probably worthy of some comment is that quite a lot of work, albeit it hasn't taken place in the committee, but quite a lot of work has been taking place by the Constitutional Working Group throughout the course of the year, which will report to this committee fairly shortly. And a number of people on this committee have been involved in that, and I thought that might be worthy of a mention as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Hodgson-Jones.
Fully agree with Councillor Gray on his comments that, but what I do think, and I'd like to put it on record, is that this committee has become a lot more effective, perhaps because of the revised membership structure, because we're no longer so large and unwieldy, but I think perhaps because there's been more focus, and we're seeing change in officers, change in membership, that is leading to more focused questioning and prodding to get the outputs that we require. And I would like to put it on record that I feel that a large part of that has been down to your effective chairmanship over the year.
Thank you. I'll make sure that's in. Yeah. Have its own appendix. Any other comments?
Sorry, that should have gone in the compliments report.
She's left the room. I'm sure she's watching at home. It's fine. Okay. So I've made some notes there of some things, and Anita, can we catch up to make sure that we capture all of that? Thank you. Okay, so the recommendation on this then is to review the report. Obviously, we've decided that there's some changes to be made in there, and we'll capture those. And then to give authorisation to me to approve any amendments on the draft report. Is everyone happy that we do that? Yeah, lovely, thank you. Item 11, Corporate Governance Committee Progress Report. And Rob, I'll hand this over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So there's been some updates on the progress report since the previous meeting, so I'm happy to take any comments or questions from members.
Do we have any comments or questions on the report? Councillor Gray.
I think we have actually, when we met, Anita, you were there, when we met on the 4th of September, the work, item 1, the Constitutional Working Group. I think there is now a timeline for bringing something through to this committee, isn't there? And I thought that might be worth us noting that it's not just that we've had a meeting, but we are actually actively looking to bring something to this committee in November meeting, I think. That's what we agreed.
Anita, do you want to come in?
Yes, we're doing some work on this, and happy to note that down.
Any other comments on anything within that? Nope. Okay. Yes.
One comment.
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking that since the second item, the update on Code of Conduct, is now complete and is deleted from the future list, that going forward the only thing left on this list is going to be the Constitution Review Working Group? That'd be nice if that was the only thing left, but I'm just wondering whether we're missing something.
Yeah.
It will be the only thing in terms of the Constitutional Review Working Group, but there has been some questions that have been raised tonight that officers are going to take away in terms of written statements of questions that will be circulated to you, and I'll catch up with them in terms of updating this progress report to reflect that.
Okay. Just before we draw the meeting to a close, I did just want to ask if there were any questions around the Appendix 2 that anybody wanted to raise so that we can publicly close the meeting. Should there be any questions from any members? No? Okay. Okay. In that case, this is normally where I would say the meeting is closed, but I just want to take an opportunity to pass on certainly my thanks, and that I'm sure of everyone else, to Sharon, who has joined us this evening in what is in fact her last meeting. She has told me that life is looking good. She's planning a holiday to the Maldives, which I'm very jealous of. But Sharon, I genuinely want to say a massive thank you from all of us, and I don't know what we're going to do without you. So a massive thank you to you.
Thank you. Chair, may I also...
You certainly can.
Because I think what this committee has been really fortunate to see is Sharon's work on audit and the phenomenal approach that Sharon takes to completing those tasks that our external audit colleagues send at a certain time of the year. And then Sharon rapidly has got all over those so that there are just a minimal, teeny tiny number that are left, which then puts our colleagues in external audit having us chomping at the bit, ready for responses. And I think that is a real asset that Sharon has brought, her tenaciousness in responding to those actions, because the speed it means that we can get to this point in the year is so crucial. So I think that is something that has been one of Sharon's superpowers, and it should not go unnoticed. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you.
And
I
with
don't
that,
think I'm going to be able to make it out the door. My head's like this.
With that, I will call this evening's meeting to a close. Thank you to officers and members for your attendance and contributions.